Hey guys, welcome back to the show. In this episode, I'm going to do a dive into some Tucker Carlson nonsense bullshit. Also, some modeling. What are people saying about the models? What should we expect from the models? Then I go into racism and Andrew Cuomo. Why is he dividing up the country among racial lines in the middle of a pandemic? Let's explore. As usual, you can follow me on my website, tstuch.com, tstuch.com. You can follow me on Twitter, tstuch1. You can follow me on YouTube, Taylor, Taylor, space Stuch, Stuch. Thank you. Have a great day. And enjoy the episode. Hey, how is it going out there, people? So, as we continue into the world in these glorious days, we are still dealing with the Covid-19 crisis. We are still dealing with, a lot of people not doing so well. But I want to narrow down. I'm not going to go into the number of deaths that everybody has. Frankly, I don't necessarily think it's too important. I mean, of course it's important, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. So I'll just quickly do a update here. Right as of now, we have worldwide total 90,000 deaths, 1,500,000 cases. The U.S. has a total of 436,000 cases and about 14,900 deaths. We're about to be interesting. Spain. So we are about to be number one in deaths. We'll probably overtake Italy soon because we lost probably close to 2,000 people yesterday because of it. And there's just a lot of information that people are going out that's coming out about this thing on a daily basis. And I think, it's unfortunate and fortunate to be alive during this time. One reason why it's fortunate is because we get to see in real time how people are reacting to data with these new methods that we have. So during the Spanish flu, for example, I highly doubt there was as much, of course I highly doubt, we know. Ooh, sorry there. Lost my microphone, lost my headphones. We know during the Spanish flu that we did not have the data that we have today. We know that we didn't have the real-time analysis that is occurring from individuals to institutions across the world. We know we didn't have that. Now, we've got people from all over the world on Twitter, on these different groups, on the internet, connecting all over, comparing death rates, comparing morbidity, just looking and scanning, scouring data, all right, scouring the world for data, and it's absolutely fascinating. And if you are online right now, you should be on Twitter, because on Twitter you will find that so many people from all different parts of the world are coming out with interesting analysis and ideas about how to combat this virus. It is truly a fascinating time to be in. Now, I wanted to dig a little bit into a monologue, I guess, by Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, I tend to like some of his political analysis. I don't actually listen to any news station in particular. I don't really listen to Fox News. That being said, it is on in the background sometimes, and I have seen clips of Tucker that he seems like he's more balanced in his approach. He asks good questions, and he seems to be on his own more. He seems to be more independent than some of the other hosts on Fox News. He was talking about the COVID-19 situation, and I believe that his concern for the economy, as many people are concerned, including myself, is driving him to be skeptical of the models to a fault. So he's talking about how the models that the CDC and everybody, the White House, are using, how they have been changing. How at first they predicted, 100,000 to 200,000 deaths. Then they're predicting 60,000 deaths. Before that, there was 1 million deaths predicted, and how the models change. And it's frustrating me because I'm not a model expert, right? I'm not a forecaster, but I've learned about models. I've learned about modeling. And also, if you are confused, you need to follow Nassim Taleb. Because if you know anything about Nassim Taleb, you'll know one of his famous sayings essentially is like, all models are wrong, some are lethal. And that comes into play especially in the realm of humans. So epidemiologists, you might think that epidemiology, like these infectious disease things, are like physics, but they're not. They're not like physics because they have to do with people interacting with each other. And when people change their patterns, when people change patterns of behavior, and when the virus affects people differently depending on underlying biology, which is extremely complex. Does somebody have diabetes? Does somebody have high blood pressure? Does somebody have, some kind of illness like leukemia? It's not as straightforward as people want to believe. People want to believe that you get sick, you either live or die, it's either A or B, and that there's like a basic understanding of why the person died, how the person died. But in reality, it's very messy. And that is why I'm not surprised. When the CDC is changing its modeling, when the University of Washington, which is what everyone's talking about for modeling, changes their outlook, you shouldn't be surprised at all. In fact, it should be expected that is going to happen, especially with a virus as new as this. So this is a new virus. It's a novel virus, the novel coronavirus, which means this is the first time we're seeing this virus. There's not data on it. We don't know how long this is going to last. We can't trust the data coming out of China. So people are having to basically create new data sets really that are reliable, coming from, say, Italy, Spain, and America, and other areas of the world. And so this data is brand new. You can't take data from a disease after 3 weeks, after 4 weeks, after a month and say, now that we have 4 months, now that we have 4 weeks of data, we know how this disease is going to spread throughout the population in the United States for the rest of time. No, that's not how these models work. They have all these different assumptions that they have cooked into them, right? Like how different people are affected, the demographics, how many people spread the virus, how many people die of the virus, and we don't even know how many people are actually dying because of the virus or not. And people are criticizing the explanation that if you die with the virus, then therefore you're counted as dying from the virus. I understand that criticism, right? And Tucker Carlson, I believe, brought that up as well. But that is how a lot of things are counted in many ways, right? Somebody pointed out on Twitter, had a nice thread that said, look, should you count a COVID death if somebody had a heart problem and maybe they would have died in, 10 months, but they got COVID and so they died this month? Did they die of COVID, right? That's a hard question because technically you can say, well, yeah, they did, right? Like, because that's what caused it now. You can also, in my opinion, you can look at it like, hey, if somebody is dying rapidly of the same symptoms that COVID causes, it seems reasonable that you could say, like, look, this is what the disease causes. This person's coming in with the disease, with these symptoms, and it seems reasonable to say, look, yeah, the person died of a heart attack, but like the person died of a heart attack because their organs were shutting down because this is what the virus does. So it's hard to know. Biology is complex. And so the statistics of this biology is even more complex, or I don't know if it's more complex, but it should tell you it's going to be very hard to get real data from this situation. And you shouldn't be surprised when the data changes and when the model changes, because the models are going to change. You're going to continue to hear the differences. Now, in my opinion, this is one reason why we should have gone, and we have gone with a harder mitigation strategy from the beginning. So when this virus really first emerged, the strategy in the United States, the strategy, like they said, schools have been canceled, restaurants have been closed. People took it upon themselves, and the government took it upon itself to close big gatherings, close big functions. And you might look at it and say, no, they shouldn't have done that, because now we can say, look at the death rate now. We can look back and say the models were wrong. We shouldn't have done that. But I've pointed this out before. When you're dealing with something like this, in our current world, when you're dealing with this kind of a situation, you can't look back afterwards and say, look, we were wrong. We shouldn't have shut down the economy. Because as I've said before, and other people have said this too, I'm not just making this up, that if we get when we get the big one, right? When we get the big one, that if society stays connected and we get a virus or a bacteria that's resistant to antibiotics and it's spreading all over the place and it is killing, 30-40% of the people that get it. If we get something like that, and we take the same approach that we're taking this time of, no, don't shut it down, right? Because we need to see the data first. By then it's too late. When you're dealing with risk of ruin, you need to act in the most conservative manner possible. When you're dealing with an event that could bring down society, then you have to act conservatively. And then when nothing happens, then you come back out and you say, thank God nothing happened. But you don't make fun of the people that said, hey, we had to stop this thing now. Now, I do understand the criticism of it because people are worried about government power and government overreach. And I am worried about that as well, as everybody should be. But there is a legitimate concern that this virus is very dangerous and could have been more dangerous even than it is. And so if we want to stay alive, if we want to stay around as a civilization, as a species in the current form with cars and computers and shit, we're going to have to make sure that when something like this happens, we're okay to take those steps. So I'll take a break and I'll come back and talk about some of Cuomo's bullshit. Hey guys, have you heard about Anchor? You probably have. In fact, you may have heard about it just before you're hearing about it now. But I want to tell you guys, I have been using Anchor to make my podcast for a little while now, and I really like it. They have lots of different things we can do. So what is it exactly? What do they provide? Well, for one, obviously it's free. They have a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. I've had to use this multiple times. You make a podcast, you want to edit some stuff out, you can use their tool directly from the app or in the computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other platforms. This is one of the best things that I like about Anchor, is that they automatically distribute your podcast to different platforms all over the internet. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, so I wanted to talk about the Cuomo. Cuomo, the New York governor, Andrew Cuomo, has been giving daily press briefings now for a while, and at first I was very impressed, and I think a lot of people were. You might still be impressed, fuck it. But there are some interesting things about his press conference the other day that really pissed me off, and it was that he's given his press briefing, and then he starts talking about the racial makeup of the deaths. Okay, now that's fine. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, we've had this many black people die, we've had this many Latinos die, we've had this many white people die, whatever. That's fine, right? Like maybe you can find something there, but instead of ending it there, he had to bring it down to the race and the class line. And I'm wondering, now I'm having a thought if maybe that's tied to the CCP. So I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. I am speculating, I have some ideas that I'm wondering if the Chinese Communist Party has been pushing the socialist, social justice warrior agenda in the United States. And what I mean by that is the hyper racial sensitivity movement here in the United States, where if you say anything that, basically everything is divided up upon race and gender and power. Like, oh, if you're a white man and you have a nice car, well, it's because you're white that you have a car. If you're a black person, you committed a crime. It's because the white people in power are oppressing the black people in power. Everything is about a race and gender dynamic. And it's been very, very negative towards the fabric of American society, because people are constantly looking at American history and American society and saying, everything is racist, right? Like if there's more white male CEOs than other races and genders, then what we need to do, it's because the country is inherently racist. It was founded on racist doctrine. The country is a horrible place. This kind of idea is very, very pervasive. I know it's very pervasive because even though it's still the minority, you see it more and more. Like you just feel it. It's everywhere, right? Like everybody, it's in business, it's in media, it's in dating profiles, it's everywhere. People are talking about this stuff. And, it's on social media, of course. Everything's on fucking social media. And I have been wondering, after seeing the Chinese Communist Party, they had a very aggressive stance on racism as soon as the virus broke out. So when the virus broke out of Wuhan back in January, immediately I started seeing anti-racism things come out of China. And I knew exactly what it was, right? Their plan, I mean, you could just see it. It was so obvious. It was to distract from the virus, right? And so they had Chinese people in other countries have, do things campaign. Like in Italy, they had a campaign called Hug a Chinese Person Because I'm Not a Virus. A lot of people hugged the Chinese person, and, well, a lot of Italians ended up getting the virus. Regardless, it's not about Chinese people. It's about the Communist Party. And I should say that whenever the Chinese state media started running racism stories, I knew that this was going to be, I knew it was a problem. Absolutely knew it was a problem. Now, Andrew Cuomo, just the other day, he's given one of his great fucking whatever, his speeches, his talks, his daily briefings, and he starts talking about how why does the virus affect people more if they're black or they're poor and they're Latino? But not so much if you're white, and if you're upper middle class and you're white. And, he starts harping on that. And not in a medical way, right? Not in a medical way like, let's take a look at these stats here. Do certain people have more comorbidities? Does it have to do with certain lifestyle issues? Does it have to do with people being in closer to the areas of the outbreak? It's hard to say, right? Because, for example, there's a Jewish Hasidic community, I believe, where it spread and killed a lot of people and spread really widely in those areas. So it's, it just all depends on where the outbreak occurred, who brought it in, where did they live. There's lots of things. And anyway, he starts harping on the racism thing. And it was very upsetting to hear because with this virus and the economic slowdown, I was hoping that as things got more desperate, people would realize the necessities in life, right? That you need, first off, you need the basic things like your food and water, but beyond that, you need other basic things, right? Whenever you have food, whenever you have water, what you need is people, you need family, you need friends. And I was hoping that these basic realizations that, actually, I need my family, I need my friends more than I need to complain about everything. Or, actually, my job wasn't so bad because, now I don't have one. I was hoping that these realizations would bring people away from the racist tropes and bring people towards a more unifying message to bring Americans together. I was really hoping that it would. but then this racist undertone of that this virus is like a racist virus, that this virus attacks, like blacks and Latinos and poor people, but not white people, right? Even though it is, the only reason I'm going to say this, the only reason you bring up that idea, that point, it's not because you're genuinely curious about the data. It's because you're trying to incite division. And I have a couple theories. One, it had to do with the Democratic, maybe it had to do with the Democratic, this Democratic election situation, right? Yesterday, Bernie dropped out. Maybe he knew that. Maybe he knew that was going to happen. And we have to divide the country before the election, right? Because if people are unified, when the election happens in November, if people are unified against the virus, people are probably going to go vote for Trump, right? Because if the U.S. is successful in mitigating the virus, if we're able to stop this thing, if we're able to start to bring back manufacturing and stuff like that, what's going to happen is people are probably going to look at Trump and say, thank you. There was already a Democratic representative from Michigan who said that Trump saved her life, or didn't save her life, but if it weren't for him, then she probably would have died. Basically, yeah, he saved her life. And so I'm thinking, okay, maybe Cuomo is doing that to set the stage for the election, right? Maybe it's that if he does this, then he can avoid dealing, he can help the Democratic Party by putting racial divisions. The other thing is maybe it's also part of the CCP plan, the Chinese government, right? Because Cuomo